It is Miles Monroe who says very eloquently that once you have defined your purpose in life, you don't want the sun to set, nor can you wait for it to rise, because there's not enough hours in the day to do what you've been called to do. I'm a blessed man for many reasons, but more so I know my purpose. Not my job, not my title, but my purpose. And my purpose is to assist individuals economically, particularly those of African descent, with an emphasis in technology. You see, I believe that technology is empowering. I believe that technology is liberating. I'm a nerd with swag. My premise is this: how do we make technology sexy, intellectual, cool, and hip for African Americans? And how do we concurrently make sure that the technology infrastructure embraces technology so that we all have access? That doesn't happen just for African Americans, but our entire global economy. Statistically, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm an African American male born and raised in North St. Louis. I'm supposed to be a part of the prison and penal system. I'm supposed to be a part of the double-digit unemployment. I'm supposed to be a part of low wages, but I came from a very loving family who fed me spiritually, physically, and mentally, and told me if I was smart and if I worked hard, that I could be successful, and I believed them. I also believed my teacher, Miss Reed, in the 6th grade, that said that technology is the wave of the future, and if you work hard and if you're smart, you'll be successful, and I believed her too. So fast forward, public school, state college, a career in technology, being able to transfer military technology to commercialization, being able to testify in front of Congress on financing technology, helping create an urban technology park, and ultimately being able to be appointed to the White House Task Force on Economic Conversion. I could not wait to call my mother and tell her nurturing has assisted me going from North St. Louis to the White House. And I called her, my loving mother, and I said, "Mom, I just had lunch with the President of the United States, with some of the top economists in the country." And in her loving mother tone, she said, "Baby, that's fine, but did they feed you good?" Walk with me through the historical perspective of African Americans in technology. In 1944, an incident happened that will forever change the relationship of African Americans in technology. What happened? The invention of a mechanical cotton picking machine. That technology wiped out thousands of jobs of African Americans. We couldn't own the technology, so we were labor-oriented. So when the technology happened, we lost our jobs. And that inverse relationship would always happen as we move forward. Next, we go to the Great Northern Migration, when African Americans moved from the South to the North for a better way of life. They worked in factories such as Ford, Chrysler, General Motors. Even moved to some of the county organizations, such as Bellefontaine, Florissant, and even Ferguson. But what happened when technology came? Those factories closed. We lost jobs. Again, we were displaced for technology. And then you had generations who never saw a collective family, who never saw skill sets, who weren't able to provide for themselves. So we lost a generation. And then last year, Mike Brown was killed by technology. August 9, 2014, a sad situation. And technology shared with the world by 3.5 million tweets of the injustices of our country. Well, wouldn't it be great if we took 3.5 million tweets and sit around the world and said how great technology could be integrated with African Americans for a better life and a better economy? But that will require change. In the short term I've been on life, I've come to realize there are two things that are constant: God and change. Matter of fact, every 30 minutes, a new technology is being developed. If you go to school now and graduate 4 years from now, everything you learned is obsolete. Last year, 30% of marriages were a part of the internet and technology. We reflect every 100 years. From 1890, we went from an agricultural economy to a manufacturing economy. In 1990, we went from a manufacturing economy to a technology economy, to a knowledge economy. Matter of fact, those who remember the 90s, we saw an enormous amount of change. The Berlin Wall that was built to last forever fell in a day. The Soviet Union, the country that vowed to bury us, performed last rites on itself. Germany and one nation became reunited. The Asian culture became an economic powerhouse. And yes, in South Africa, a $400 billion economy was a result of democracy. But did we really change? Let's look at the epicenter of technology, Silicon Valley, where billions are made. Disruption is a way of life. Great minds come together to change the world, and you would think that change happened in Silicon Valley. It would have a great amount of diversity. However, for the last 15 years, community activists went to Silicon Valley to ask them what their EEOC numbers were. How could this technology revolution be a part of the minority culture? For 15 years, they asked to share their numbers. They even told the judges that it was a trade secret. Well, fortunately, last year, Reverend Jesse Jackson, the Rainbow Push Coalition, and the Silicon Valley Project bought stock in many technology firms in Silicon Valley. And they released their numbers, starting with Google last June, then Facebook, then Twitter. And I'm sad to say, and disheartened, that when they released the numbers, only 1% of African Americans are in Silicon Valley, which is the epicenter of technology. How can we do this in 2015? The question is this 1965 Selma or 2015 United States of America? We see that the hiring practices are dismal. 53% white, 41% Asian, 4% Hispanic, and 1% African American. Now, I'm an economist. I study the distribution, production, and consumption of products and the relationship between them. I also look at supply and demand, and more so return on investment. So tell me, how can a culture who contributes $1 trillion to the economy can only be 1% of the technology infrastructure? Is that truly return on investment? However, this is not a social issue. It's an economic issue. And diversity is profitable. Companies that have members and employees that reflect their consumers are more profitable. Companies that have a social responsible investing strategy, stocks rise because they understand their consumer. Let me share with you one story on diversity in Silicon Valley. I happen to be fortunate to sit at a meeting with the president of Intel at a fireside chat. And he talked about how great Intel is in their engineering efforts. With science and technology and math, they're very strong in that area. Matter of fact, he said their new growth area is going to be in fashion technology, clothing, eyeglasses, and watches. So they decided they're going to create a computer watch. And in doing that, how can we make it not cumbersome to be able to charge the phone or the watch? These 5 middle-aged Caucasian engineers didn't really have much about fashion faux pas. However, tried to come up with a solution to solve this problem, and they couldn't. But in walks an African-American female engineer, and she says, it's simple. A watch is jewelry. And at night, I take my jewelry and I drop it in a bowl. All you have to do is create a bowl that will charge the watch phone. Hence was created the smart bowl. Now, that one diverse idea that was able to come to the table changed economically the company. Not just a social issue, it changed economically. So how many ideas from African Americans that don't make it to the table? How many ideas that don't make it because I wasn't a part of the Stanford infrastructure? I wasn't a part of the fraternity. How many ideas that we never take and be able to assist us, and they end up in the cemetery, dream deferred, because I was told that the cemetery is one of the most wealthiest places on earth, because those dreams never got a chance to make it. In economic development, we talk about smokestack chasing. In economic gardening, we grow what we have in our assets. So how do we move this forward? Let's come to St. Louis, the gateway of the West, the 250th anniversary of our birth. How do we change this infrastructure? What are we doing now? We're converting ourselves to a tech hub. Forbes magazine, Fortune, so many organizations are saying we're a great technology hub. We have founders that come out of St. Louis. Square, Twitter, Locker Dome, earbuds, a wide variety of technology firms. Matter of fact, we have a great tech ecosystem. We have technology firms, financial firms, accelerators, even I-10. But more importantly, when we look at this tech system of all the great things we have here, we don't want to repeat the same mistake that others have, because there's only one organization up there that's African American, Harris Stowe. So how do we change the model that others have done and move to a new agenda? We have an opportunity in St. Louis to close the digital divide. We have an opportunity to close the Delmar-Skinker divide. Either we all win or we all lose. That is a choice. So the question is, African Americans in technology, do you have exclusion or empowerment? And if we don't make this change, we will flip the coin high in the world and have the problems on the other side of St. Louis. And that is number 3 in crime, number 1 in producing lowest wage jobs, murders increase, tourism is detracted, and we lose. But we cannot afford to lose as a city that reinvents itself. So how do we move forward? St. Louis has a very unique opportunity that no other city has in this country. We have a direct correlation between African Americans and technology that no other city has in this country. We have a past, a present, and a future. Starting with our past, Roy Clay, the black godfather of Silicon Valley, who went to Silicon Valley in the late 50s, recruited by Hewlett-Packard brothers in 1965. And in 1966, when Bill Gates and Steve Jobs were in diapers, he created the first mini computer. He went on to help invest in technology, went on to create his own company, and became the first vice mayor of Silicon Valley, Palo Alto. Roy Clay from St. Louis by way of Kinloch. Presently, the largest black business in the country hails right here in St. Louis. Dave Stewart with Worldwide Technology, $6.5 billion in revenue, 6,500 employees. How can that affect the economy, both locally and nationally? And the future. Jalen Bledsoe, 16 years old. He started his company 3 years ago, a Hazelwood West student, with 120 employees now, 3 years later, and $3 million in revenue. We have a future. I believe that vision is so important. My vision is to integrate African Americans in technology. How do we move forward? There are national models in place that we can duplicate. 3 areas: sports and entertainment, education, and minority tech firms. The first is sports and entertainment. We know that sports and entertainment has an influence around the globe. What if we showed urban kids that their rappers and their sports figures were interested and integrated into technology? Well, if you didn't know, Dr. Dre took some throwback earphones from the 70s, integrated streaming, and created Beats, and sold their company to Apple for $3.5 billion. Carmelo Anthony, an athlete, basketball, created a technology equity fund to move his agenda forward. Nas, a very eloquent rapper, didn't invest just in 10 companies, not 20, but invested in 40 technology firms. This trend of athletes and entertainers into technology can help us move forward. Second, education. It was said that in the past, Latin was the language, and if you couldn't speak Latin, you couldn't affect society. Well, the language today is coding. You have African American organizations that are teaching kids how to code. Hack in the Hood, Yes We Code. Objective is to create 100 coders in the technology arena in African American industry. And lastly, minority tech firms. If we're going to reduce African American employment, we increase African American businesses. And we do that by accessing capital and contracts. And I'm happy to say Black Silicon Valley in Atlanta, the civil rights birth, has a 100,000 square foot facility helping technology firms grow in the minority technology space. We have models, we have opportunities that we can do and we can grow. So TEDx, with the opportunities and the creativity that you all have, what is the call to action? What can you do today to make sure that we all integrate this great technology infrastructure? Lastly, we talk about St. Louis. And St. Louis has economic strategies as well and solutions. Ferguson 1000 was created to create 1,000 jobs. We partnered with Global Hack to be able to do the first Ferguson hackathon. And in doing that, we're able to bring 200 coders together to assist in development. We also have St. Louis internship program that does technology and entrepreneurship for urban youth, as well as Claim Academy. With that, I want you all to move forward with solutions, and I call that the 3 C's. Contracts, capital, and contacts. Capital has to infuse technology in order to move forward. We need to have capital that does that. So those of you in the financial markets, you can move that forward and assist us in doing that. And contracts help corporations be able to grow minority tech firms. And lastly, contacts. Life is based on relationships. How many authentic friends you have that are different than you, that you pull into your space to move forward? We were born a date and we died a date. And how do you make that dash significant? We are all better if we're able to improve ourselves and have access to all the things that our country offers. So I say very eloquently, be the best you can be and society benefits. Russell Simmons said it very easy in his book, Do You. Mark Twain said, 2 days are important in our life. The day we were born and the day we were found. The day you find out why. Pharrell said, clap your hands if you believe that happiness is the truth. And Dr. Land says that we can change the world if we really integrate technology for all. All we have to do is try. So let's look at that last axiom that we know from a historical perspective, and that is the revenge of the nerds, hashtag. But the revolution and the evolution is the new nerd with swag. God bless you.